Hi, everyone. I hope this finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I could not be more delighted to have the pleasure of interviewing Hilary Harley, a counseling astrologer with a global practice whose grandmother inspired her passion for astrology. In 2002, Hilary founded Harley Holistic Healing to help align clients with their fullest potential. Before embracing astrology, Hilary worked in Boston for an HMO and later in state government managing grants. But when her first child faced respiratory failure at just 6 weeks old, Hilary's world and priorities changed. She stepped into motherhood full time, and she began to grow in unexpected ways, which eventually led her to rediscover astrology, her grandmother's passion, long buried but impossible to ignore. Since then, Hilary has devoted herself to mastering the astrological arts, enriching her knowledge through workshops and conferences, and she is also a gifted writer and teacher. Following the publication of her novel Ring of Truth in 2008, she has contributed astrology columns to Spin Magazine and the Otis Observer, and through her podcast Mystical Messages, she shares astrology forecasts and highlights innovative energy practitioners. Hilary is also a founding member of the Three Wise Women, a global metaphysical community that invites seekers to explore the universe's endless wonders. And full disclosure, I had an astrology forecast reading by Hilary that was filled with impressively accurate, insightful information about my life's journey and my future. During my session with Hilary, she likened me to a spiritual Dr. Ruth Westheimer, the renowned sex therapist known as Dr. Ruth, whose success as a radio personality stemmed from her unique combination of expertise, warmth, and humor. I could not have been more flattered. I'm looking forward to talking with Hilary, who will be speaking to us from Otis, Massachusetts, about the history of astrology, how it works as a blueprint and GPS for your life, what the sun, moon, and ascendant mean in a person's chart, what are planetary cycles and patterns, how Hilary integrates Reiki and the Akashic Records into her sessions, how astrology can be used as a healing resource in the wake of a death, and her predictions for the rest of 2025. This will no doubt be an incredible interview filled with valuable astrological insights and predictions we can all use from a gal with an incredibly big, warm heart. Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life. Hi, Hilary. A warm, heartfelt welcome to Grief and
Thank you,
Rebirth.
Irene. Thank you so much, Irene. It is an absolute joy to be here with you, and you really are my role model and Dr. Ruth of the grief and rebirth world for me.
Oh my goodness, you set me up. I mean, that's my calling card for the rest of time. I love that. And I remember listening to Dr. Ruth, so that dates me a little bit. Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Some people listening have done astrology. A lot of people listening have probably not that familiar with it. I know astrology has ancient roots. It dates back thousands of years. And evidence suggests that humans began observing celestial cycles as early as 25,000 years ago. with markings on bones and cave walls. I also know it originated in Mesopotamia, and they also predicted seasonal changes and they interpreted divine messages, and then it spread to other places in the world where horoscopes were cast for newborns and major life events. What was the common thread or belief these cultures shared, and how were their interpretations different? And are the interpretations different in cultures today as they were in ancient times or more similar? I mean, it's amazing that it goes that far back.
Yes. So these are amazingly insightful questions. So I would first say that astrology is the study of planetary patterns and cycles. And so when 25,000 years ago, or even 10 or 5,000 years ago, we were living in an agrarian, meaning rural farming, harvesting, planting culture. And yes, hunter gatherer as well. And so astrology was a way of making order and sense to the cycles of the seasons. First, farmers or people would notice that the moon disappeared from the sky once a month. The sun rose and set each day. And so that cued people to there might be other planets or stars in the sky that have similar patterns. And at some point, whether it was in Mesopotamia or, some basin in the cradle of civilization, certainly, they think Stonehenge was a celestial laboratory and a way to track because the solstice comes right through the sarsen stone in Stonehenge. So these were all agrarian cultures, and the Mayans also had a similar way to track exactly when certain planets were going to be active or visible. And so it was simply a way to say, oh, there is a greater order to our lives dictated. I don't think that's too strong of a word, but guided by the stars. And so let's pay attention to what happens to us and to our world when we notice these patterns in the sky. And that's how it all began, the tracking.
It amazes me. I mean, they must have looked up in the sky. They didn't have telescopes in those days, and they were able to see all these planets and start to figure all of this out. That is, like, so amazing to me.
To the naked eye. Yeah. So I mean, the outer planets that we now use, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, were not quote unquote discovered until much more recently. So I think Uranus was discovered in 1780s sometime, Neptune, similar 1880s. Pluto was not formally discovered until I think the 1940s. It was very recent, really. So, these people in ancient times were using their naked eyes to track. And, in some distant measurements, you could see Saturn, which was considered the farthermost planet to observe. But even that, you have to have a very clear sky and a very strong, keen eye to
Yeah.
see Saturn. So it was by tracking these planets and their cycles and their orbits around a stationary point on Earth that people and correlations between events and behavior that oh, this is making sense. So it's thousands of years of tracking these cycles and patterns.
It's amazing to me. They were brilliant. I mean, just a brilliant way that they figured this out. So let's go back to a little history that's not quite as far away as Mesopotamia. So I'd like to know what kindled your grandmother's interest in astrology, and how did you learn about it as a young kid? Because weren't you raised to believe that metaphysical subjects were nonsensical voodoo? So
Yes, I was raised in a very traditional household. We don't believe in anything that is not modern and scientifically based. My father was an engineer, and so, no poop on the engineer,
no woo-woo allowed.
but he didn't really want that as part of our family discussion. And so flash forward, my grandmother,
Now this was his mother. Oh, your mother's mother, okay.
my mother's mother, her husband died very early from a rapid onset heart attack, that occurred in the middle of the night, and he was 54, very young, and so in the wake of that, it took her a few years, but in the wake of that, she was also trying to make order from this very, very upsetting incident, life-changing incident. And so this ties beautifully into your podcast, Grief and Rebirth, because she didn't know what to do and where to go. And she was looking for some sort of guidance. And astrology, if you know about the 20th century, was just starting to come into acceptance in the 50s and definitely the 60s. So he died during the 1950s, and by the 1960s, the sun sign columns were being printed, and then there were astrological magazines that you could read. So she really, I would not say she became an expert or a teacher, but she became an avid seeker and student of astrology. And so flash forward, I was born in the 60s, giving away my age. And this was, the age of Aquarius. It was all the rage. And when she would come to babysit or stay with us, which was fairly frequently, she would talk about how I was Cancer the Crab and my sign was ruled by the moon and the qualities associated with Cancer the Crab. And it was enough to really spark my interest as a child, because, ooh, wow, there's something that explains why I am,
Who I
drawn
am.
toward
Yeah,
who I am, home, family, food.
that's fabulous. Wow. And your father never knew that your grandmother was talking to you about this stuff while she was babysitting for you.
I mean, he would say, "Oh, that's just hogwash." If I ever asked him or asked my parents, my mom or dad or both of them together about it, "Oh, that's just hooey, and don't pay any attention to that." So I didn't know
Well,
what to believe for a long time, so I sort of put it away, and as I tell people, the metaphysical modalities choose you, you don't necessarily choose them. It's a process of co-collaboration.
it's fascinating. So let's hear, can you explain to us how does astrology work as a blueprint and GPS for a person's life? And what is all this sun, moon, and ascendant stuff? What does that mean in a person's chart?
Okay, so a natal chart, it's called a natal birth chart, is the beginning point of any astrological session. So if you've never had your birth chart done, that's where you start because it is a roadmap. It shows you where you're going, where you're coming from, your comfort zone, your blessings, your challenges, any kind of places you might get stuck, repeating patterns. And essentially, it is a picture of the sky. So if you're laying flat on your back looking up at the sky, it is a picture of the sky the moment you were born. So it's a time, space, coordinate. So it's exact time, exact date, and exact location of birth. So for me, that was around 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on July 14th, 1964. And so it's a snapshot and it shows the rising sign, shows all of the planets. But the big three in astrology are the sun, the moon, and the ascendant. So if you think of an avocado, the outermost layer of the avocado is the rising sign, which is also known as the ascendant. And it's like a mask or a pair of glasses that you wear. It is your outlook. And the yellow green part of the avocado is the sun, which is the identity, and the core of the avocado is the moon. So, for somebody who has, say, Scorpio rising, that is how they look at the world, how they perceive and receive all stimuli and data. Then they might have a Virgo sun, which is how they identify in the world. And, when they go to look at a magazine or online, they read the forecast for Virgo, which is, I have to say pretty limited because it's strictly related. It's not personalized. It's just related to all Virgos.
Yeah,
So
I
that
never
is,
can understand that when you see these charts and all. How does it refer to all these people?
it's a very broad brush. And I mean, I have very mixed feelings about sun sign astrology because it's a gateway into the study of astrology because people are fascinated. Oh, that sounds just like me. A Virgo is very health and wellness oriented. They're very amazing work ethic. They love animals generally, detail oriented people, habits, practices, and routines that work for them. And then the moon is how you feel. So somebody could have, say, a Sagittarius moon. So a Scorpio rising, a Virgo sun, and a Sagittarius moon. And a Sagittarius moon needs a lot of freedom and liberation. And so this is the combination. And then you have all the other planets from Mercury all the way out to Pluto in certain signs and certain houses. And the outer planets are generational markers. So anybody born in the 60s has Pluto and Uranus in Virgo. People born in the late 70s, early 80s all have Pluto in Libra. So this is how people share qualities and operate as a generation and a cohort.
So, how do all these planetary cycles and patterns empower people to make better decisions in having more rewarding and fulfilling lives? Because a lot of people use astrology to help themselves improve their lives or give them insight into what's going on, right? So, how does that work?
So with the natal chart, it's looking at where you're going, what your life purpose is. And that's indicated by the lunar nodes. And I don't want to get too complicated here, but it's like the little headphone symbol is the lunar north node, the moon's north node. It's the whole evolutionary calling. And if you know your destination, like on a GPS, oh, that's why I like to travel. That's why I like to study. That's why I like to teach. Or if you're going to a different part of the chart, say the fourth house, oh, this is why I wanna run a restaurant or work with the elderly, because that's the 4th house domain. So it is a way of dissecting somebody's, desires, and it explains and describes where you're going, what your comfort zone is, and how best to get you to the place that you wanna go.
Wow, that's really great. It's like great guidance for someone. It really is. And this is really important for everyone listening to Grief and Rebirth podcast, Hillary. How can astrology be used as a healing resource in the wake of a death?
That's a wonderful question. So as you can imagine, I've had a fair share of people who have lost loved ones, whether they're a parent, a spouse, or a child. And what astrology gives you is a window into timing because it deals with cycles and patterns. So it can say this person, yes, they died, but how looking at the impact of the ones remaining behind, how long that you may be grieving and the best modalities to move through the grief and find a way to cope with. I don't want to say survive or thrive in grief necessarily, but move through the grief and learn to live with it in a way that it doesn't keep you from living your best life.
Can you also see from a chart? I mean, I know you don't predict death, I know that. But can you see from a chart the proclivity or the chance that a person could die, or I mean, or as I would call it, transition, and the effect of that, what that was supposed to do for the person who survived? Like, what were the life lessons, or what? How is this supposed to guide them into another? Take those lessons into another future part of their lives, into the next chapter? Does it help them with all of that?
Yes. So that's a great question, much broader based. And astrology does speak to it. Each person that we interact with, whether it's the barista or a life partner, is a karmic interaction. And we're engaging with that person for a reason or a season and or a lifetime. And so when we incarnate, there's a great movie called Soul by Pixar that actually explains this in an incredibly entertaining way, both for adults and children, that prior to incarnation, we make a contract with source or spirit. And all of the people that we will engage with are part of that contract. So, whether you get divorced from a person, whether a child dies during your lifetime, whether sibling, any loved one that passes out of your life, there is a contract. And when you have learned what you came to know from each other, not just the person that survives, but the person that has passed, they have fulfilled that portion of their contract.
I find that to be an incredibly comforting way to look at relationships, because in this lifetime of mine, I have had people who I was very close to for a while, but then the relationship seems to have served its purpose, and then they kind of leave your life, and I know some people who don't let go, but that has enabled me to let go. I'll say to myself, "Well, that must have been that person was for a reason or a season of my life.
Mhm.
It served its purpose, I learned my lessons or whatever I'm supposed to take from it, and now onward, and I don't lament as long as we had a clean relationship and all that." And I find that that really is, and I've passed that on to some people, and it's very helpful.
It is incredibly helpful, even to people going through divorce is a form of grief. And you think when you get married, you're never going to lose this person. Either, it's death us till death do us part, right? And so it is very helpful when a friendship ends, that it also involves grieving. And
Yes.
so there's all forms. It doesn't have to involve the passing of the physical body. It can be all forms of loss. And it really does help to explain. And the larger extent existential question, not to throw around big words, but the question being asked of us is, what did we learn from our engaging with that person? What did they teach us? And what can we use, the positives, particularly, to carry forward when we interact with other people?
Yeah, I think it's such a wonderful, I would call it a tool. It's really a great healing tool when you're dealing with people to understand that. And the other thing that you do that I'd like to know about is I know that you use Reiki for all of your charts before reading them. So please explain, what is Reiki, and how does it, and what how does it infuse people with this healing energy? I know that it helps resolve physical, mental, and emotional well-being. So how do you, so before you read my chart and found out that I was Dr. Ruth, the reincarnated Dr. Ruth, did you use Reiki on my chart before you read me? And what did that provide you? What insights did you get from that?
So, Reiki is heart centered, energetic, an energetic modality. astrology is very cerebral. It's data, essentially. It's a map. So I'm looking at coordinates and aspects and all of this lingo and patterns. And Reiki is, I don't want to say the opposite, but it's like left hand to astrology's right hand for me. I will speak for myself. So Reiki, I Reiki the chart because it opens my heart and it opens the heart of the person whose chart I'm reading. And it allows for a greater soul wisdom, in my experience, than if I just looked at the cold, hard data coordinates and read them to the person. For me, it's a way in, it's a much more personalized, relatable
I can
tool.
attest to that. And I know you also use the Akashic Records. So how do they add color and depth to your session? So not only is someone getting astrology from you, but you're using Reiki and the Akashic Records, so that gives you even more information about them, right?
Yes, thank you. You're getting 3 for 1, 3 modalities for 1. I don't know of any other astrologers out there that are doing this, but I'm sure some are at least using one other modality. So the Akashics are essentially the internet of the universe. It is all information, data, imagery, sound. It's everything. And so if you think of the Akashic library, we all have in Judaism is a great example. There's the book of life. So we are written into the book of life, and this speaks directly to the Akashics. So the chart, the natal birth chart, is part of the Akashic records. So when I open the Akashic records, first I Reiki the chart, then I open the Akashic records before I read a chart. And that taps into a universal knowledge. It is not heart centered, it is not simply cerebral, it is imagery, it is sound, it just, for me, it really enriches the reading and the session in an unquantifiable way. It's much more deep, much deeper.
It feels to me like you add a lot of seasoning. It adds a lot of seasoning to your readings. It's not
Flavor.
just the pure right, flavor. You're right, a little more in-depth flavor and insight to the readings. And, as an example, let's go to you have a true story about a client who was uncertain about launching a soul therapy business. Her astrology sessions with you helped her to have a successful launch. So if someone wants to come to you and they've got some kind of a business thing going on or whatever, how does astrology help with that? How did that help her?
Okay, so astrology, because it is about cycles, timing, and patterns. A lot of my business is people calling me to say, is this a good time to fill in the blank, launch a business, apply to college? When am I going to have a baby? When should I get married? All of those timing questions. So, a great example is a client of mine who she had a lot of Libra energy, and Libra is sitting on the fence. Should I or shouldn't I? They're sort of afraid of committing one way or the other. So this had been not a fantasy, but a real soul goal for her for a long time to open a salt cave in an area where she had no competition. It was a brand new modality. So I didn't even really know this, but I read her chart and I said, you're supposed to be working in a new form of healing therapy that involves light and heat. And
Wow.
and she said, "Oh, well, it's always been my dream to open a soul cave." And I was like, "Well, you better get on it.
It's in your chart over here.
This is what you contracted to do, among other things, have a family and so forth." And then the next question, the corollary question is when to open, when to sign contracts. These are all part of astrology because there are good days and there are better days. I wouldn't like to say there are bad days, but there are more advantageous days. So I did this morning, so I had somebody on the phone with me talking about a real estate transaction. When should they list their house? When should they sign with a broker? That is a good portion of my business.
That's really great. And what a tool. That's great. Now I have a little more a broader question to ask you because you've stated that we are transitioning from Homo sapiens to Homo luminous in 2025 onward. So
Mhm.
please define Homo sapiens and Homo luminous. And what are your predictions? And this is big. We are going through troubled times, Hillary. What are your astrological predictions for the remainder of this year of 2025?
Okay, so let's talk about the Homo sapien to Homo luminous. So we are in the biggest developmental leap in mankind's history. So if you know anything about anthropology, when we went from Neanderthal to Cro-Magnon, that took quite a while, but that was a huge developmental leap when man starts to take charge of his own world. And, then astrology and the sciences and writing, cerebral knowledge comes into place. And the man over time has become completely identified with the mind, which is Homo sapien. I know, and that's the definition. It's man
Show
of
me the
knowledge,
facts. Show me the facts. Show me the facts, the data. Yeah.
right? The data. So now we are evolving from that. It's not that we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we're going to Homo luminous, which is soul and heart centered. And it's much far more far reaching, broader, holistic. Is we're always going to use our mind. Einstein had this great quote that the mind is the instrument, the imagination is the gift. But modern man has really mixed up and convoluted, putting mind over imagination. And the mind is to be the instrument of the imagination. And that's the direction that we're going. So I don't want to say we're undoing, but we're unlearning a lot of the indoctrination, programming, conditioning that we were inculcated with, really. Like that's how we were raised and trained all over the world. I mean, certainly more Aboriginal or Native cultures don't have this issue as much because they're operating from a heart and soul center. But we're unlearning in the modern world has to be from the mind and instead of from the heart.
That's interesting. So do you have a prediction or 2 for us for the remainder of 2025?
Yes. So we are going through a portal right now.
That's fascinating.
Yes. So the more you can focus on what feels joyful, healthy, peace oriented, the better you're going to be. I want to preface with that because this is an incredibly turbulent time. Normally, planets change signs, one here, one there. The inner planets change signs much more frequently, meaning Mercury, Venus, the moon, Mars, they change signs fairly frequently. This year, from November of 2024 to July of 25, we have 5 planets, outer planets, changing sign, and that is a huge deal. The only reference that I can find is that the last time anything similar to this happened was 3,000 years ago.
Oh my
So
goodness.
no one alive any of a reference point for that. And we don't know how to react or respond. So the pandemic was the beginning of this, where it was like, okay, kids, there's more to life than the 9 to 5 and, punching a clock and doing the thing. now we're really realizing Pluto entered Aquarius, Neptune just entered Aries, Saturn is joining Neptune in Aries. And then immediately on the heels of that, Jupiter goes into Cancer, Uranus goes into Gemini. A major outer planet that changes signs. These are generational markers. It's like, whoa, now that feels different. How do I react? It's a call and
Right.
response that we're doing with this energy that happens every time there's a gear shift. And so we're really, it's like, if you think of it as being in the ocean, and every time there's a planetary shift, there's like this wave that hits you and knocks you over. And then you stand up and you get your bearings again. And then another wave comes up. So, all to say, that is why it is really important to focus on heart centered values, your family, your loved ones, your health, what makes you feel healthy, and have your life stem from that center point, because otherwise, it's like you're chasing and grasping at straws.
So let me ask you, we're gonna go through these major transitions, these major
Hmm.
things happening through, you're saying August. Now what
Hmm.
happens in September? Does that mean, okay, everything starts to settle down after these shifts have taken place?
We're doing a bit of a dance.
It's a bit of a dance.
Yeah, Pluto is going to stay in Aquarius. That is about invention, marching to your own drummer, doing your own thing. It is about the collective. So you can see in the society a lot of these protests. It is man and woman, obviously. I'm just saying man as a unified point is rising up and saying, hey, Aquarius is the humanitarian of the zodiac. It is the inventor of the zodiac. So you get those two words together. There's a better way of doing it. A great example is Abraham Lincoln, who was a famous Aquarian, and he freed the slaves. And so there is a better way to live life, the brotherhood, the sisterhood of mankind. That is staying the same. Neptune and these other planets are giving us a taste of what's to come. They're shifting into these signs, and then they're going to step back a little bit, part of their retrograde cycle, meaning moving back into Pisces. So we get a taste of it in 2025, and then 2026, we are in the energy for a substantial period to come. So it's much more about connectivity, messaging. Jupiter is the saving grace. It goes into Cancer, the crab, which is about family and hearth and home and nation. But Aries is Neptune, and Saturn going into Aries is fire. It is brand new. It is the spiritual warrior, not worrier, warrior. And we're ready to do life in a very different way than we've ever done it before. The last time Neptune was in Aries was 1861,
Wow.
which was, so nobody
Civil War.
alive has ever had. Pluto was in Aquarius during the American and French Revolution. We don't have, other than historical records, we don't have reference points for what this feels like on a boots on the ground kind of way. So that is why, there is this change, this tumult all around us. That is not going anywhere. And it's not something to be mourned if you can look at it as going from, say, pre-World War One, when there was an agrarian, male-dominated society, to post-World War One, which was industrial, the rise of female, women got the vote and women's rights. So it's progress, and progress is never easy. And people that want things to stay the same are going to go kicking and screaming.
It makes total sense, and it makes you look forward to what is to come. It kinda gives you a balance when you're viewing
Hmm.
events to say, "Okay, this is we got to expel the germs and the symptoms or whatever that's going on, because we're going to heal and better is in front of us. So now that everyone wants a session with you, how can the members of our Grief and Rebirth podcast audience connect with you? And you have any kind of offering for our members today?
Yes, I'm delighted to offer 20% off of any reading that comes through Grief and Rebirth podcast. My website is www.hilary with one L, Hilary, Hilary, Harley, like the motorcycle, Harley, so hilaryharley.com. And you can find all of my information, the kinds of readings, anything. My podcast is on there, Mystical Messages, The Three Wise Women, which is a group that I co-founded with a psychic intuitive and a medium to better serve and guide people through this enormous time of transition.
Wonderful. And we will have links to everything in the show notes, everyone. So take a look. And can you explain to us, how can astrology be used as a healing tool? Well, we've talked about it's a good healing tool for introspection and self-improvement. But do you have a message about the importance of healing to share with our listeners today? I mean, astrology is a tool for healing also, but why do people go out of their way to do this, to get the courage to change their lives in certain ways?
What I would say is I can hold up the mirror, or any healer can hold up the mirror, but it's really the person that has to want to take the first step toward healing. And astrology is certainly a tool for that, a healing modality, because it offers wisdom and knowledge is power. And when you feel empowered, you can say, oh, this isn't the boogeyman or the ghost in the closet. This is something that I can actually work with and manage and move through.
That's great. And what is the Hilary Harley tip for finding joy in life?
Finding joy is do something kind for yourself each and every day. It does not need to be elaborate. It can be a foot soak after work with a little bit of essential oils. It can be a 20-minute walk, even a 10-minute walk in nature, just to move your body. It can be something more elaborate, like a spa day, or spending time with animals is a big one right now. I really advocate for, because animals they're so heart and soul centered that is really a way to connect immediately with nature.
That's beautiful. Hilary, many find solace in the idea that life's challenges might be part of a larger cosmic plan, which can bring a sense of purpose and peace. Therefore, your dedication to helping others align with their fullest potential through astrology, Reiki, and the Akashic Records is a testament to how passion, courage, and service can touch lives in profound ways. Whether it's through your astrological forecasts, your healing sessions, or your enriching teachings, you've found a way to bring light, clarity, and healing to so many. My heartfelt thanks to you for all the good you do, and for this incredible interview filled with its valuable astrological insights and predictions we can all use. Thank you again, Hilary, and many blessings.
Thank you so much, Irene. It's been a joy to be on your show.
Thank you. As I like to say, to be continued. Thanks for tuning in to Grief and Rebirth. Remember, you can dive deeper into everything we've discussed by checking out the show notes and all past episodes at ireneweinberg.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and wherever you love to hang out online. Plus, we're on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe and never miss a video. For those of you listening, you'll find links to my 2 books, Good to the Last Drop and They Serve Bagels in Heaven, in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see those books listed right above, so don't miss out. And here comes a special treat. If you sign up for Audible as a first-time user using my link, which you can find in the show notes, you can get They Serve Bagels in Heaven for free. And finally, people often ask me what I read, what I use, and what I recommend for healing and self-care. So I've carefully curated a compilation of those items to share with you. You can head over to kit.co/grief and rebirth to check them out. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, many blessings.